Wszystko zaczęło się od króla Jagiełły. Mała Łodzia stała się miastem, które w XIX wieku rozwijało się najszybciej na świecie. W ciągu zaledwie 60 lat od powstania pierwszej manufaktury powstaje przemysłowa, wielonarodowościowa metropolia. Jednak wiatry historii nie zawsze jej sprzyjały. To, co zniszczył los, odbudowują łodzianie. Nasza Łódź. Miasto wielkich szans. Od 600 lat w sercu Polski i Europy.
Jesteśmy Polakami. Jesteśmy niezwykłym społeczeństwem. Zawsze w obliczu wielkiego wyzwania potrafimy się mobilizować. Potrafimy stawić czoła wielkim wyzwaniom. Bo nie potrafimy stać obojętnie. Bo obchodzi nas bezpieczeństwo i przyszłość naszych dzieci. Bo wierzymy, że nadzieja zwycięża apatię.
Win what makes liberals lose, and maybe we will try to exchange some of the lessons from national perspectives and try to come up with something which can be adopted on the European level, like the best practices, lessons from each other, and cheer each other up and unite our forces heading towards a very decisive moment in European history, I believe. So today with us we have Dr. Šárka Shoup. She's the executive director of the Institute for Politics and Society.
Yes, maybe more about the everyday life and everyday issues, but this is the point that we reached, that we have no longer any other option. So I will definitely say that Polish people, I think that most of the European people kind of are used to living in the welfare state, which is a good and a bad thing, because in terms of the populism, it's kind of easy to use living in a welfare state to grow the idea of populism, and this is what my party right now is dealing with, that even we are in a month to the elections and we kind of have a congress and when we showed our program, and we somehow have to have similar propositions that the populists have just to have any chance to win. So we're trying to combine all those liberal ideas with fighting with the populism and trying to be more down to earth and down to the people's problems.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Actually, you mentioned also the cost of living crisis, and that might be one of these down-to-earth problems, especially for the liberal electorate. Actually, it's usually liberals are people who live for the perspective that if you work well, you will earn well. And
In their success up till now.
I remember you said that Mark Rutte was actually he was successful because he was relatable. Just cycling, riding a bicycle, and that's something I think which can be actually projected on the liberalism overall. It needs to be relatable. It's just it has to find liberals don't propose easy solutions, but it has to have an easy package at least, and which all comes down to also to educating the audience, because to understand the liberal approaches, the audience need to speak the same language, which is a very long-term solution, which is not something which can be done just ahead of the elections. Antonina, I would like to ask you also, because since we're speaking about new European liberalism, it also might overlap with new target audience, which is indeed, as liberalism was targeted at rather wealthy, older people. What is your perception now with the...
Yeah, we definitely need a redefinition and change our thinking in case of reaching the target audience, because as you said, the liberalism is associated with the people from the 90s, with the elites, political elites, especially in Poland. And let me be honest, in Poland, being in a political elite and being associated with political elites from the 90s, it's not a very good association. And when we are talking about the different target audience, we are thinking about the youth. And when you want to reach out to youth, you have to be relatable. You have to be authentic. You have to change your perspective and maybe do not use the word liberal as often. Maybe think about the values-based approach more. Think about how to reach to the people who are dealing with the problems like housing crisis. Like in Poland, we have a crisis when it comes to the education, about the social issues, about the politics, and how to be more close to the people and to know their problems, and do not come from the position that I know it all and I will show you how to live and how to build a better future. Because I have this opportunity to probably represent the generation that is eager to shape the future and of my country. And what we absolutely hate is the older people that are telling us
mainstream of all the open-minded ideas. How does it look from the?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting situation right now in the Netherlands because there are two, let's say, relatively new parties. One is a party for farmers and citizens. And we have someone that came from the Christian Democrats and now he has his own party. And he, how do you say, people like him because he has a strong sense of integrity and he always asks like tough questions to the government, and so people like him for his character. And then also with the movement for farmers and citizens, Caroline van der Plas is her name. She really speaks in this like common language, common sense type, authentic type of way, which also appeals to a lot of people. But I would say these two relatively new parties, they're not so much on the extremes. So maybe I think liberal parties could also work with these two parties. So maybe actually these two new parties, they how do you say, they can maybe prevent like that the far right parties become really big, because people that are a bit like doubting where to go, maybe they go to these two new parties. Although I do hope that most voters go to the liberal parties, of course.
But this is actually a very good observation, because I think it's part of the core issue that we are still functioning within some extreme cases aside, but we are still functioning within the liberal discourse. And within this discourse, which has been taken for granted, liberals have almost nothing to sell. And that's a very tricky thing. How to
so many, like even money comes to them. And when it comes to the political parties, they are still working like they were working 40 years ago. And the main issue is that maybe the liberals should think about changing the ways how the liberal parties, even in Poland, are working right now. Maybe think about the quotas for the youth, which is a controversial topic, of course, but without any changes and without any like change in the trajectory of how the liberal parties in Poland are working right now, the chances of winning and chances of the change are still kind of low.
Thank you very much. And Maartje, like you also represent very like the same generation as Antonina, basically, and I'm curious how it looks. Is there the same divide, like generational divide in the Netherlands? Because I think in Central Eastern Europe, the core of the anti-conservative movement, I would say, is young people indeed, like people who want to change, who want to build something new which has never existed anyway. And in the Netherlands, in low countries, it's the opposite. And what are the moods of the young people there?
Well, I guess probably similar to other European countries. I would imagine that young people are usually a bit more pro-European than older generations, things like that. But I'm not sure if there's anything particular in the Netherlands that is like very different in this respect than other European countries. So it's more in line probably what you see in all of Europe.
I think actually European card is becoming has been a big part of actually what appeals to the electorate of the liberal parties, and actually something which needs to be strengthened in the future, because they just present a complete alternative to the just not thinking in national terms that much. Yeah.
I just want to say that we have a different situation in Poland, because there's a huge polarization when it comes to the young people, because on the one hand we have like those people who are very close to the European values, and because we were mostly born in the European Union. I was 7 when we joined the European Union, so I don't remember the times without the European Union, Poland being in the European Union. But also we have a very huge group of the radicalized youth, very close to the far right, that are spreading the values of living the European Union, of the Polexit. And we have a huge polarization on that. Because there is a tricky situation that right now in Poland, the very far right use the social media, use the TikTok to reach out to the young people. So that's why they're having so much of voters, potential voters. And when it comes to the liberals, they didn't use that opportunity that much, because they're still stuck to the very classical ways to reaching to the voters, not the modern ones. So they didn't reach out to the young voters, and we are trying to catch up on that. But due to the problem that we don't have that much young politicians that are from liberal parties. It is, it's a very like strong problem and very wide, I will say.
Thank you very much. Just also I wanted to tell the audience that we will have a chance to get questions from you. So, in principle, yeah, we can.
Hi, I'll make it very quick. My name is Ricardo. I was very privileged, in fact, to be in one of the workshops that the European Liberal Forum organized on this new liberalism. I'm going to piggyback on something that Šárka said, which is this tension between the old and the new liberalism. And I'm going to make a quick point, and then I'll ask a question, because I think we're talking about this in the edges, which is, of course, we need to be understanding, we need to talk with people, we need to listen. That is all fine. But on the other hand, I'm a little bit afraid that we also be missing something really important. And actually, our colleague from Poland was just mentioning that. This week, a study came out, 30 countries, the population between 18 and 35, only 57% of the respondents believe that democracy, it's the best way of governing. I repeat, 57% of the respondents said that. Now, my question is, and I'm always lucky that I have a microphone in my hand when Leszek is here. Leszek, congratulations again for a tremendous freedom game. Because yesterday, during the opening session, I saw the average age of the people in the machine hall. And I'm not going to say that we should hammer young people in the head, because that's not a way to work. And here's my question to you, Dániel. Could we be missing an opportunity of being too mushy, which is something that also liberals are accused to, too soft, and not explaining to these people, do you know what authoritarianism means? Do you know what it means to live in dictatorship or in the Soviet system? So how do you straddle that line? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've always been of the opinion that liberals are a bit too soft, especially when it comes to countering populist narratives. If you look at the way that, the Orbáns and the Melonis attack, pro-European values, European way of life and all that, then, the best response that we get from that is, oh, well, you probably shouldn't be doing that, it's weakening the European Union. So yes, absolutely, we have to be more forceful in countering these narratives. And one discussion we had in the workshops as well is there such a thing as positive populism? Can you fight fire with fire? Can we be at that level of forcefulness that the other side is bringing? And I think we can definitely bring the amount of energy, at least. Because one of the other problems we talk about with the liberal voter base is that liberals are in what we call the friend zone. So on a scale of 1 to 5, liberals will get consistently 3 and 4s. You know, they'll say, okay, we like you, you're sympathetic, you're young people, you're nice people. Would I vote for you? Well, maybe as a second choice. I'd rather vote for the big EPP party or the big Socialist Democrat party. So I think that's also going in the direction of saying, yes, we need to be clearer with our messages, more forceful with our messages, and developing a more cohesive identity that the other groups, because of less diversity, seem to have.
Yeah, I would just like to say, because I see we have only like 10 minutes left, and I think we talked a lot about elections, campaigns, strategies, and so on, but I think it's also important to think about this topic of new European liberalism on a bit more fundamental and philosophical, dare I say, level. Because I think if you look at like liberal philosophy, I think there's always this criticism that it's too individualistic. This is a criticism that liberalism gets, and I think it's very important in terms of the future of liberalism to communicate that we care about people, that liberals care also about social relationships, and that usually liberals are people that feel very responsible from their own individual being, feel very responsible for their communities, and I think this is not a story that liberals tell enough. And then maybe secondly, I'm of the belief that our core liberal values, such as individual freedom and protection of liberties, they don't need an update. They are beautiful core liberal values, but I think the challenge for liberalism is to connect these core values to the challenges and opportunities of this day and age and the future, such as climate change. And I think we can, for example, rely on the harm principle of John Stuart Mill also in terms of environment and climate change, and that we shouldn't damage it. And then, for example, if you look at problems regarding big tech, then you can have the story that liberals have always been against power concentration, and you can also apply it to these new challenges. So I think this is a way in order to take our philosophy and take it to the modern age, let's say. So I just wanted to bring that message as well.
Thank you very much. I think we had another question here.
Yes, thank you very much, Laurens Verhindje from the European Liberal Forum. No, just my question is here because I usually hear that you know, we have to tackle the narratives of others. We have to tackle like how should we answer to the narratives of populists and actually authoritarian figures. But usually what I do here is like you're actually playing them in their cards. You're playing their game on their terms. My question is, what is our narrative that we have to give? Not just to be an alternative or an answer to them. No, we have to be the better alternative. What is our narrative to be the better alternative than populists and authoritarians?
This is the core of the question, indeed. How not to fall into the frame, but how to have our own.
I think that's an easy and a hard question at once. Because I think the only way, unfortunately, to be in the game is to somehow also play their games, play their cards. But to give better knowledge of the thing that we want to provide, maybe to say why, maybe what there will be effects of these propositions. Maybe do not be so harsh on the propositions that the populists are, not be so black and white, maybe to provide some gray space, but the only way to be in the game is to somehow play their cards. And this is what I hate in politics somehow, because this is the place when the very great ideas and the things that we are learning in the universities are reaching out to the very harsh ground. That at the end of the day, when we want to bring our liberal ideas to the life, we have to win the elections. And this is the hard part.
Definitely a question we struggle with in Hungary, where you have a high concentration of media in the hands of the other side, so about 80%. How do we get our message across, even not even what it is? But I would agree that we liberals have the best, original value propositions. I mean, freedom, equality, opportunity, your classic life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Those are good ideas, and I think they're just as viable today as they were in the 18th century when they were first formulated. The question is, how can we make them relevant for a person in their everyday lives without remaining at the level of abstraction? I think we tend to talk too much about the, big principles, the capital V values, instead of talking about what this means for a person in their everyday life. What does the European Union mean for you in your everyday life? What benefits do you get that you can feel, other than the fact that we like having a European identity, but also being able to travel, being able to start a business that can be immediately across countries. So I think we have to really be concrete about what these benefits are, what these values mean in practice.
This is it basically sums up the whole point of looking ahead for liberals. And one very interesting insight, which we also got during our expert debates, was the use of fear, because it's one of the biggest strategies which populists are using, and thinking whether liberals can actually learn something from populists. We're talking about the use of fear, but in a reverse sense, showing to people what they can lose. Because again, many of the things which we enjoying today are the things which couldn't be taken and shouldn't be taken for granted. And actually that can be part of reversing the narrative and showing what would happen if the European Union didn't exist? What would happen if you didn't have that, if you didn't have that? And that's in a way, is a reconciliation between playing the authoritarian narrative or a populist narrative, because indeed, in many countries we're already somehow function within this, as the case in Poland or Hungary, unfortunately. But also, it can be a way to prevent the populists to overtake the whole discourse, but by showing that it's not only what you are gaining, it's also what you are about to lose, and very easily. And also, and that's when it comes down to education in the long run, economics and philosophy, the most basic disciplines. And if students have very good knowledge of these two disciplines, it's very difficult to vote for populists, just because you understand that some things just don't work in a certain way. It doesn't matter how you frame them. But also in a short term, indeed, some concrete. And that's when I think what we're trying to do is policy briefs and policy papers, typical Brussels formats, but actually it's like showing to people in very concrete terms, this was built by the EU, this is where the money comes from, this is how, but that indeed, it's trying to break this bureaucratic approach, because things are getting very real. I'm myself from Ukraine, I know how real, how quick things get real. And then, of course, many abstract, complicated things don't work. People just start functioning in a very human, emotions-based level, which is very important. And I think that's what liberals should use. They should appeal more to emotions. And if you have, I think we have time for final remarks. Yeah, if you...
Yeah, I would like to just react also to the game which Lawrence mentioned, like, yeah, you have to play their cards, but you can change the rules. So, and it's exactly what you just mentioned, it's about the communication. So if you are using the fear in the communication, then that's what is our role, to like actually like show like what you can damage, what you are already having, and what you can lose. And this is critical for us, because now the fear in the current situation which we are dealing with, or in Ukraine, what is happening, so it's so strong, and we just have to like unite together and really show like how the things are and how it can be differently.
Capitalize on the, yeah.
You had some very interesting thoughts, and I just some reflections. I believe that liberals are hopeful and optimistic people, and that this is the story that we should tell, and that we believe in the future and the possibilities that it brings. And also in my book about the free market, you know, there are challenges to the free market, but if you look at liberal democracies that integrated the free market, I mean, this has created in the past decades a lot of prosperity and wealth and good, and it leaves individuals the possibility to choose where they work, to choose from projects that they want to buy. And in terms of fear, if I look at the Netherlands, maybe a challenge actually is for liberals that we've been quite successful, and that we are almost like taking it for granted what we have. That's a challenge. I don't know what the solution to that is for my country. How do you present a strong narrative when you... I mean, because liberalism, I think they always... It's also like a force that fights against like power, like fights against the power of a too strong church or a too strong state. What is it that we fight for then in the Netherlands in terms of liberalism? I think that is a really challenging question. Yeah.
Well, I started by saying that this is a timely discussion because we do have some time left to correct the course. So we'll be looking at elections at the national level. We'll be looking at the post-route to Netherlands. We'll be looking at Poland next month. We'll be looking at Slovakia. We'll be looking at what works and what doesn't. But when we're looking at or thinking about what we can lose, we should also be mindful about the results that we had in this mandate. I mean, you usually criticize the European Union for being slow and inefficient and more concerned with the shape of bananas than anything that has any practical effect. Whereas in this mandate, you know, we had the response to COVID, the response to Putin's aggression, the Green Deal. So that is also at stake. We want to keep going forward.
So I just want to quickly say that I believe that the future of the liberalism lies in our hands, in our voters' hands. And I also firmly believe that the principles of the liberalism can help us to achieve more prosperous and inclusive Poland. And I hope for that.
Thank you very much. This panel was not meant to be to provide any answers. It's more food for reflection because it's a very open-ended question, and I hope it will take us some time, but we'll come up with solutions. Please stay tuned. The Liberal Forum will publish the paper based on our expert discussions, but also taking into account what we discussed today. And this is our contribution to the new European liberalism, and we'll circulate it in the also next time when we come at Freedom Games. We'll continue this topic, I hope with more positive prospects on the European level after the elections already. Thank you very much.
It's not always easy to recognize. It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it and how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people, but for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together.
Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry. Pan Zbigniew Hołdys.
Zgadza się. Dla znajomych Zbyszek.
Serio? Zbyszek. Nadchodzące wybory są zbyt ważne, żeby zostawić je bez kontroli. Dołącz do obywatelskiej kontroli wyborów. Zróbmy wybory bez picu.